Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, Chapter 7, verse 20 and 21. Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum langayate kirim, yat kripatamham vande Shri Gurum Deemtarinam, Paramananda Madhavam, Shri Chaitanyeshwaram, Hari Om Tat. से पंच तत्व मिली पृथ्वी आसिया पूर्व प्रेमा भांडारेरा मुद्रा उगादिया पांचे मिली लुटे प्रेमा करे आस्वादना यत यत पिए तृष्णा बाधे अनुक्षणा. Say those Panchatattva, five truths, milli combined together, Prithvi on this earth, Asiya descending, Purva original, Prema Bhandarera, the store of transcendental love, Mudra seal, Ughadiya opening, Panche Mili mixing together all these five, Lute plunder, Prema love of Godhead, Karya Swadana taste, Yata Yata as much as, Piye drink, Trishna thirst, Badhe increases, Anukshana again and again. Translation. The characteristics of Krishna are understood to be a storehouse of transcendental love. Although that storehouse of love certainly came with Krishna when he was present, it was sealed, but when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his associates of the Panchatattva, they broke the seal and plundered the storehouse to taste transcendental love of Krishna. The more they tasted it, the more their thirst for it grew. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is called Mahavadanya Avatara because although he is Sri Krishna himself, he is even more favorably disposed to the poor fallen souls than Lord Sri Krishna. When Lord Sri Krishna himself was personally present, he demanded that everyone surrendered unto him and promised that he would then give one all protection. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this earth with his associates, he simply distributed transcendental love of Godhead without discrimination. Sri Rupa Goswami, however, could understand that Lord Chaitanya was none other than Sri Krishna himself, for no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can distribute confidential love of the Supreme Person. Verse 22, Puna Puna Piyaya Haya Mahamatta Nache Kande Hase Gaye Yaiche Madhamatta. Puna Puna again and again, Piyaya causing to drink, Haya becomes Mahamatta highly ecstatic, Nache dances, Kande cries, Hase laughs, Gaye chants, Yaiche as if Madhamatta one is drunk. Translation. Sri Panchatattva themselves danced again and again and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of Godhead. They danced, cried, laughed and chanted like madmen, and in this way they distributed love of Godhead. Purport. People generally cannot understand the actual meaning of chanting and dancing. Describing the Goswami, Sri Srinivas Acharya stated, Krishna Kirtan Gana Nartan Parau. Not only did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates demonstrate this chanting and dancing, but the 6 Goswamis also followed in the next generation. The present Krishna consciousness movement follows the same principles, and therefore, simply by chanting and dancing, we have received all good responses all over the world. It is to be understood, however, that this chanting and dancing do not belong to this material world. They are actually transcendental activities, for the more one engages in chanting and dancing, the more he can taste the nectar of transcendental love of Godhead. Verse 23, Patra Patra Vichara Nahi Nahi Sthana Asthana Ye Yanha Paya Tanhe Kare Premadan. Patra, recipient. Apatra, not a recipient. Vichara, consideration. Nahi, there is none. Nahi, there is none. Sthana, favorable place. Asthana, unfavorable place. Yei, anyone. Yanha, wherever. Paya, gets opportunity. Tanha, there only. Kare, does. Premadana, distribution of love of Godhead. Translation: in distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, then the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. Purport: there are some rascals who dare to speak against the mission of Lord Chaitanya by criticizing the Krishna consciousness movement for accepting Europeans and Americans as Brahmanas and offering them sannyas. But here is an authoritative statement that in distributing love of Godhead, one should not consider whether the recipients are European Americans, Hindus, Muslims, etc. The Krishna consciousness movement should be spread wherever possible, and one should accept those who thus become Vaishnavas as being greater than Brahmins, Hindus, or Indians. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that his name be spread in each and every town and village on the surface of the globe. Therefore, when the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spread all over the world, should those who embrace it not be accepted as Vaishnavas, Brahmins, and Sannyasis? These foolish arguments are sometimes raised by envious rascals, but Krishna-conscious devotees do not care about them. We strictly follow the principles set down by the Panchatattva. Verse 24. Lutiya khaiya diya bhandara ujare ascharya bhandara prema shata guna bade. Lutiya, plundering; khaiya, eating; diya, distributing; bhandara, store; ujade, emptied; ascharya, wonderful; bhandara, store; prem, love of Godheads; Shataguna, 100 times; Bade, increases. Translation: although the members of the Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity, for this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. Purport: a pseudo-incarnation of Krishna once told his disciple that he had emptied himself by giving him all knowledge and was thus spiritually bankrupt. Such bluffers speak in this way to cheat the public, but actual spiritual consciousness is so perfect that the more it is distributed, the more it increases. Bankruptcy is a term that applies in the material world, but the storehouse of love of Godhead in the spiritual world can never be depleted. Krishna is providing for millions and trillions of living entities by supplying all their necessities, and even if all the innumerable living entities wanted to become Krishna conscious, there would be no scarcity of love of Godhead, nor would there be insufficiency in providing for their maintenance. Our Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly and no one provided for our livelihood. But at present we are spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars all over the world, and the movement is increasing more and more. Thus there is no question of scarcity. Although jealous persons may be envious, if we stick to our principles and follow in the footsteps of the Panchatattva, this movement will go on unchecked by imitation swamis, sannyasis, religionists, philosophers, or scientists, for it is transcendental to all material considerations. Therefore, those who propagate the Krishna consciousness movement should not be afraid of such rascals and fools. Verse 25. Ucha lila prema vanya chaudike bedaya stri vridha balaka yuva savare dubaya. Ucha lila, become agitated; prema vanya, the inundation of love of Godhead; chaudike, in all directions; vedaya, surrounding; stri, women; vridha, old men; balak, children; yuva, young men; sabare, all of them; dubaya, merged into. Translation: the flood of love of Godhead swelled in all directions, and thus young men, old men, women, and children were all immersed in that inundation. Purport: is thus distributed, there is This is an indication that from the birthplace of, when the contents of storehouse of love of Godhead is thus distributed, there is a powerful inundation that covers the entire land. In Sridhar Mayapur, there is sometimes a great flood after the rainy season. This is an indication that from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, the inundation of love of Godhead should be spread all over the world, for this will help everyone, including old men, young men, women and children. The Krishna consciousness movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so powerful that it can inundate the entire world and entrust all classes of men in the subject of love of Godhead. Verse 26. Sajjana Durjana Pangu Jada Andha Gana Prema Banyaya Dubaila Jagatera Jana. Sajjana, gentlemen, Durjana, rogues, Pangu, lame, Jada, invalid, Andhagan, blind men, Prem Vanyaya, in the inundation of love of Godhead, Dubaila, drowned, Jagatera, all over the world, Jana, people. The Krishna consciousness movement will inundate the entire world and drown everyone, whether one be a gentleman, rogue, or lame, or an invalid. Purport. Here again it may be emphasized that although jealous rascals protest, the Europeans and Americans cannot be given the sacred thread or sannyas. There is no need even to consider whether one is a gentleman or a rogue, because this is a spiritual movement which is not concerned with the external body of skin and bones, because it is being properly conducted under the guidance of Panchatattva, strictly following the regulative principles. It has nothing to do with the external impediments. So we'll continue here onwards next time. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.